Can have roll call?
Okay. Commissioner Alkalali.
Present.
Commissioner Santa Croce.
Here.
Commissioner Walter.
Present.
Commissioner Jackson.
Present.
Commissioner Evans. Commissioner Altman.
Present.
Commissioner Caldwell.
Present.
Commissioner Totoro Hargrave.
Present.
Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Billups.
Present.
Commissioner Chair Stevens.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. It says the police chief update, but I'm gonna move to the approval of the agenda first. So can everyone please review that? Any corrections or deletions, additions to the agenda? I'll entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. So before we get to public comment, we would like to allow for City Administrator Lazarus to come forward and talk about the police chief forums. We all sat in on, or not all of us, but a lot of us sat in on those. And he's gonna give us an update of where they are in terms of the search.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At your last meeting, I told you that I would be able to come back and give you a little bit of an update on where we are on the police chief recruitment. Several of you generously offered your time, was it last week, the week before? Calendar kind of compresses, to participate in some of the review panels. I've spoken to a couple of you separately and still look forward to receiving additional input if you have the time to do that. Where we are now is we've done background checks on the candidates that we have, and we are looking forward to trying to get an employment agreement in place within the next week. I'm not going to address specifically who that entails right now, because I want to make sure that before we make any public announcement, we do have both a candidate, and I'd also like to make sure that I can inform council of who the recommendation is, because we do want this to be an empowering appointment and not one that is in any way divisive. But again, I considered all the input that was received. I looked through all those results, and I appreciate all the heartfelt comments that I received as well. So really, that's about as much as I'd like to say right now. However, if you have any questions, I can certainly respond to those.
Any questions? Any feedback on the panel that we sat on?
I guess I have a question, just, so if you're looking to make an offer the next week, if you want feedback that you haven't gotten, you need that fairly quickly.
Yes, tempus fugit.
Anybody else?
How would you like to receive that feedback?
Yeah, we can do it by telephone call. If there's a place that's convenient for you to sit and talk, I can meet you wherever that works for you as well.
Thank you.
But again,
I'll make myself and my schedule flexible to meet your needs.
any other questions, comments?
How many members, I should know this, of this commission participated in the interviews?
Five.
5? 'Cause we had to make sure it was less than a quorum. So, and I think,
And you did not fill out rating sheets, right? You just made one recommendation?
We each filled out rating sheets. There was, I believe, a summary sheet that was constructed as well, but I know I have some questions about how that summary sheet of our panel was summarized.
that would be,
I'd be more than happy to go through that with you if we can meet face to face. What I had was a composite numeric score as well as strengths and weaknesses.
Gotcha.
And I will just share that, because then we had a debrief, Robin attended, I attended, Councilmember Rowley attended last Friday, and Councilmember Brand, it was Thursday? Okay, on Thursday. And basically we're each individually sort of reporting out, because I was hoping, and as I shared at the meeting, that we would be provided information on the, provided, and that ultimately this can be shared, this feedback, or data feedback, and also the scores from each of the panels, how they, that feedback, I think would be very informative for all of us, and I certainly couldn't represent council to you without that information. So if there's a way to transmit that, I think that would be very helpful. And I know, again, when we took this panel approach in previous years, at least 1 year with the police chief search, that information from each panel was provided to the council members at the time. And the police panel, the staff panel, the council panel, the citizens panel, and it's just, more information that guides us all. So,
Appreciate the point of view, and I will give council as much background as I can.
and report out on the recommendations of each of these panels, their scores, that kind of thing.
And that's important because council makes the appointment based upon my recommendation.
Right.
So it is one of the more important appointments council gets to make, and I think providing the basis for my recommendation is important, and I will respect council's wishes in that regard.
I have a question. I thought initially there was going to be 2 separate panels from the commission, and now there was one
There was only one.
Because of the number of us.
Yeah.
because of the number of people that could attend.
We were condensed into one because there were fewer than a quorum present. Had there been 6 or more of us, we would have been split into 2 different panels.
Okay,
But since
So-
we're only 5 of us, we were just in
that's
one.
how that was decided.
Exactly.
I think someone called off on the morning of,
Okay.
and I can't remember who
Yes.
it was, but somebody called off, and that's how we ended up. Yeah. So it was fine.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments, concerns? Thank you.
Well, thanks again for all of your participation, input, and patience as we've gone through the process.
Yes.
Thank you.
We anxiously await the appointment. Thank you. So I'm gonna, on the agenda one more time, skip public comment. I'm gonna go right back to it. I just wanted to get an approval of the minutes if anybody has read them. Anybody?
I'll second.
I have a first and a second on the minutes. Anybody?
This is the April 30th minute.
Correct. Any discussion? Come.
Just for everyone's knowledge, I did ask, request that for this meeting and future meeting minutes, for the record, if it could also be noted, the attendance could be noted and the attendees. It's just a good general practice, so I believe these minutes will be amended to list the names of the people who attended the April 30th meeting, so thanks.
Any objection to any of that? No? So there's been a first and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we will accept the minutes from the April 30th meeting. And now we will open it up for public comment. I'm sorry. So if anybody from the public would like to speak, now would be a good time to do that.
Hello, my name is Shirley Beckley, and I'm someone from the community. And I just have a question. Sorry. There we go. You cut me off already?
No, we're just trying to start it, okay.
Not in charge of the button.
Okay.
I just have a question. We didn't know, a lot of us didn't know about the April 30th meeting. So we brought that to the attention of the HRC, because that's when we found out that you had met on the 30th. So is there somewhere for us to go? Is there some way for us in the community to know when you meet and so that we can be sure not to miss any more meetings. Is there do you have a website yet, or?
Well, I can speak to the April 30th meeting. That was called by myself after the situation with the HR director was made public, because I was getting comments from the public and people asking questions, and I had a lot of questions, and I know other members of the commission did. So I called that meeting. I thought we had posted it and given 7 days notice, but I'm not sure where it's being posted. I think,
Madam Chair, sorry.
oh, go ahead.
The May
I
14th.
think that the meeting that's in question was the orientation.
It was the first meeting.
Oh, was it the first
Not the
meeting?
emergency.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I thought you were saying that
No, I knew
the
about the.
April 30th,
No,
14th.
or 14th.
Emergency
I knew
meeting,
about
the
the
special meeting.
14th. I got that in an email the
Okay.
day of. But on the 30th, when you met, that was
Yeah.
your first official meeting, right?
Correct.
Yes.
So we
Yes.
didn't know
Yes.
about that. And I would just like to impress upon you, there's those of us in the community that have worked very hard to get where we are today with this commission, even though all of us aren't very happy with the outcome, but we're willing to, let me speak for me. I'm willing to work with you and hopefully we get where we want to get, but we need to know when you're going to meet so that we can be here and have some input. Because there's too much work put into this not to know. So that's why I'm bringing it up.
So I'm sure that the information about when we meet will be available somewhere in the world, but
Register.
we should
Register.
expect that,
Right.
that typically it's the fourth Tuesday
The fourth Tuesday
of the month.
Each
Of the
month,
month.
yes.
And
at 5 o'clock.
At 5
Right.
o'clock, yes.
ish,
Ish.
right, because
Yes.
it shifts a little bit depending upon availability, but that's the general expectation at this point.
But the calendar is posted for
Where?
the year, yes,
On the city's
yes. And
Website.
downstairs.
website,
Register.
Our Legistar, correct.
but there will be something, you all will have a website at some point.
Yes, it's in the final stages now,
Okay,
yes. And the calendar is also posted on the site as well.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
We adopted the schedule of this meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, we did.
Yes.
Any other public comment?
Mark Corey here again, just to discuss certain matters of the commission. One issue that I'd like to bring up is the fact that we have a situation where unfortunately, there's an incident took place November 11th, 2016, where there's alleged hate crime occurred in Arbor with a lady with a hijab who was a U of M student. And what's particularly disturbing about the way this investigation took place was the APD, one of the officers made a statement that was broadcast nationally in a press release that this incident was a hoax. The incident was investigated by CARE, the Council of American Islamic Relations, the FBI, the University Police, and also the prosecutor's office. First, it was a hoax. What had happened, though, eventually, 3 months later, Steve Hiller of the prosecutor's office had indicated that he concurred with a veteran prosecutor that this woman who was declared committing a hoax would not be prosecuted. They declined prosecution in terms of justice. Given there's no statement issued by the FBI, by University Police, the question is, was there some kind of rule that would prevent this stuff from happening, where the APD officer calls somebody reporting a hate crime, basically that they committed a hoax? This was broadcast nationally, even though the woman's name was not released. I found it really disconcerting that people, obviously the APD, the CARE people, the FBI, certainly probably people who went to school with the U of M, knew of this incident, knew of the identity of the person, and yet an officer, apparently not, it wasn't the chief of police, but some officer made a statement to the press that this was a hoax. Given the fact the prosecutor made it very clear that he was going to prosecute in justice, and he firmly stated it wasn't because we're somewhat disinclined to go after somebody who's Muslim, the question remains, was appropriate behavior by an APD officer. Many departments have ruled that officers don't make statements to the press. And I think this puts everybody in a real bad position in the city because there was a demonstration in support of hate, those suffering hate crimes at U of M. And I think that's just something that should be looked into as to if it did violate a rule of the police department to make that statement, that be investigated. But if there isn't a rule, let's have one. Because I've had situations, being a criminal offense attorney myself, where statements are made to the press that prejudice the case. And I don't know what happened here, but it was a very strange series of events. And the public, and I'm not making a statement whether this woman was telling the truth or not, or whether it was what happened, but the actions of the prosecutor's office, compared to what was stated by a police officer in the case, are rather disconcerting. So I would just encourage the board to look into these general issues and the specific issue regarding this. Thank you.
Any other public comment? And we're gonna move on to the old business. And we were supposed to get names for candidates for chair and vice chair to Denise. Do you want to report on what you received?
Yes. I have one name running for chair, and that is Commissioner Alkalali. I have,
And me.
oh, that's right, and Commissioner Stevens. And I have 2 members running for chair, for vice chair, and that's Commissioner Jackson and Commissioner Altman.
So we had discussed potentially these candidates making statements, and I think we had decided that was going to happen tonight. Is that right?
We have?
Yeah, that was my motion. Yeah,
thought
I think
so.
so.
Right.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah.
So do we want to do that tonight, now?
Hmm?
Okay.
That
Yes.
seems like a good idea.
It does. So we can start with Commissioner
Alkalali.
Akalali. I never say your name right, I'm sorry.
It's all right. Just begin?
Yep.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, hello, everybody. My name is Commissioner Al-Qulali, and I'm running for chair simply because I, first of all, have experience in this meeting setting, and there needs to be a balance struck between formality and allowing conversation and ideas to flow. Leadership is not just about conducting a meeting, it's about being able to sit back and listen, which is why I'm not particularly adamant about being chair. Commissioner Stevens would make an excellent chair. But I do have a lot of passion, experience, and ideas for how a meeting like this would be run, and I would like the opportunity to show that. But like I said, my fellow candidates are also incredibly qualified.
Thank you. Commissioner Jackson?
So I'm putting my hat in the ring to run for vice chair. I am qualified to do so in that I have certainly run other organizations, been president of a board, but mostly because I have experience working with diverse groups, and I don't mean that ethnically, I mean diverse types of thinkers. So experience working with young people, with social workers, with activists, with attorneys, with bankers, with educators, with other researchers. And I am a collaborative leader, so I am interested in supporting the chair in his or her mission. I guess will be her mission. And in being able to be delegated some responsibilities that might enhance our work, our function on this commission. Those things include community outreach. I think it's going to be important for us to take our mission to the people and have conversations with people where they are. And that's something I'd like to facilitate. I think that's extraordinarily important. I also think that we ought to have some social media presence. For example, if we tweeted where we were going to be and when we were going to meet, people might have an additional source of understanding where we're going to be and when we're going to be. But mostly I know that I can be a supportive person to our chair and have experience as a vice president and a president of a board, but also in terms of time management skills. Fortunately, as an academic, my schedule is flexible, but certainly wide open for the next few months. So I can devote lots of time and bring my considerable energies to the job.
Thank you. So I think it's my turn. My name is Robin Stevens, and I would like to be the chair because I believe that we have a really good police department, but I certainly think it can be better. And I think that we can do a lot of good work together with the community to make sure that all voices are being heard and that the issues that people in the community experience with the police are properly addressed and acknowledged by us as a board and as a commission. And as I stated earlier, I've been working for the Washington County Public Defender's Office for over 20 years. And so I've had the privilege of being able to read a lot of police reports from all of the different police departments throughout the county and speak to those people who are the subjects of those reports and understand where they're coming from, but also understanding the role of the police and the role that they play in our entire community and how the norms are set in the community and the climate of the community. And I would like to be a part of making sure that it's a community that's accepting and responsive to all members across the board and that people are treated fairly and accurately, equally by our police department. And I've had a lot of experience just running groups and being chairs and organizing. So I'd like to be able to do that for this community as well as for the police department, being that unbiased person to be able to listen to their concerns, but also help them understand where the community is coming from. So I hope that you will consider me for this position. Thank you. And then the last person, well, I wouldn't call you last, Commissioner Othman, but the next person is Commissioner Othman.
Thank you and good afternoon. My name is Mohammed Othman. I'm putting my name as a vice chair for different reasons. One is I had quite a bit of experience being on boards. I was the president of the Arab American organizations from 2001 to 2003. At the time when we had the 9/11, we had established a really good relationship between the city government and the Arab and Muslim community, as well as with the police department. I served as a chair of the board of trustees of the Muslim Community Association of Ann Arbor and surrounding areas from 2013 to 2017. And at that time also, we continued the relationship between the city government, the mayor, city council members, as well as with the police department, especially with the kind of environment we are experiencing and living these days. And the last part of that was now, as Muslims, we are experiencing, or we are going through the fasting month of Ramadan, and we had requested the police department to increase their visibility around the Muslim masjid, the mosque on Plymouth Road, and they have been doing a great job to just being there and being visible. So having this kind of relationship also would help in really bridging and building confidence and trust between the community as well as with the police department. Also, for the past 14 years, I have been serving on a board of one of the public charter schools serving students to achieve. So I feel that I have the experience. My way of running things is I will be in the background where I will propose an issue, either an agenda or otherwise, and let the members decide and vote and discuss, and then try to bring in a kind of parts of what they have saying and build consensus. And I feel that this is the way to go, is to respect the opinion of each individual, but how we can work together to serve the purpose of this commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? So I think that's it, and I think what we had decided, and please anyone correct me if we're wrong, is that we would do the statements and then we'll kind of let that marinate for a week or so. Is that correct, David? And then we were gonna vote, or do we want to vote tonight?
I believe it will be voted on like the next meeting.
Next meeting?
I thought we talked about next
Okay.
meeting.
But our minutes,
Do I have that wrong?
It was to
I
my
don't
understanding
remember what I
that,
had for breakfast this morning, full disclosure. It could be. I mean, that,
maybe that's a typo, it should be.
I thought when we last discussed it, the statements and the voting would occur on the same day.
yeah,
Okay.
that seems right.
I think we went back and forth.
That makes more, I mean, it seems right because it
I
makes
think
more
the
sense.
statements were supposed to be done the meeting from this one,
Okay.
so it might have been an oopsie on our part.
Oh, well. Do we want to vote tonight then, or do we want to put it off?
Madam Chair, the question I have is what, is it a secret ballot, a public ballot?
It's gotta be public. I
I
think
think
the
it-
rules state that we have to vote publicly, I think.
Do we have a, wait, hold on. Let's look at
I
that.
don't think we get to do anything. I think everything has to be posted.
I've never, it's always,
I don't think it's in.
well, my past, not that
yeah,
it makes a
because it's
difference,
at
but
first, we don't have it. It's not in
I think it is in here.
do we have a lawyer?
How do other boards and commissions do this?
Well, so I've been, in the two commissions I've sat on, it's always been a secret ballot.
Okay, so.
A piece of paper, it's not that.
I think
that makes
it less awkward.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Make it less awkward.
Yeah.
We should double check. 'Cause I really think it's
I don't see anything in the
Oh, wait, we got a
bylaws.
legal expert. It's an open vote?
In the bylaws it is?
Yeah.
The PAC doesn't do,
specifically refer to it, but.
You mean public?
Yeah.
Okay.
open,
How do we get away with that in other commissions?
yeah.
Can-
Could someone
can-
address
wait,
this
wait,
question?
Can I ask a point of clarification?
Yes.
What requires it? So my experience has always been, it's been a closed vote. This is 8 elections I've seen across 2 commissions, and I'm just wondering, and it's nice because it doesn't create factions or anything. So the question is, what's the authority for that it has to be an open vote?
It's a decision of the body, so it needs to be made in an open meeting.
Oh, so the authority is the Open Meetings Act, is what you're saying? And is that like that on,
7.
well, maybe we gotta get the other commission square, right? All right, fair enough. Yeah.
So
Parks
he
and markets.
is saying that because it's
I'll rat him out in a second, right?
a commission vote, it has to be an open.
I think it's 7-9 says that. And also, we can't abstain because we said we have a conflict of interest. Somewhere else.
What page is that on?
Page 5.
Okay.
What was it about conflicts of interest?
Well,
I should say about conflicts.
is anyone opposed to an open vote?
I mean, I am, except we have a legal opinion that it's different. I'm trying to, is that in the bylaws?
Article 7.9, I think?
Page 5.
I'm on page 5, I don't see Article 7.9.
Voting shall be by voice or show of hands.
Oh,
Yeah,
maybe
that's
they-
the general provision, and that applies.
This is for instance, it's got to be right on there.
All right, fair enough. 7.9, if anyone's
Yep.
interested.
Okay, well, I guess that's what we're doing then, because that's what it says, 7.9.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
are we taking the vote tonight?
Is that what we want to do, or,
I'd like to make a motion to,
sure, go ahead.
I'd like to make a motion to modify the agenda so that the vote is tonight.
Is there a second?
Someone can, and then you can discuss it, if someone just seconds it.
I'll
I
second
don't think I can do that, okay, you can second it.
Second,
Yeah, we can
and
discuss.
discussion.
We don't need to modify the agenda to vote tonight. We can just vote tonight.
Commissioner, may I ask why it is that you're opposed to an open vote? Just out of curiosity.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen the dynamics in a number of groups like this, and it's kind of awkward for other people. You know, it can give rise to factions. I mean, the one thing I was thinking of when I was sitting here 5 minutes ago is that it would be nice to shuffle these seats every meeting, so I got to sit next to you and chit-chat with you about whatever happened last, you know, it's just an odd, it's an odd thing. It's what we vote in, you know, we vote in secret in this country. But I'm not opposed to it. I mean, the bylaws say what the bylaws say. I just don't think, as a technical point, we need to do anything other than for her to call the vote. We don't have to amend the agenda or anything else. We just have to vote.
Thank you for the insight.
Yes.
Thanks.
Further discussion on whether or not we vote tonight? No? No further discussion?
I mean, if we postpone the vote, that means that we more or less forget what the other candidates might have said. So we'd have to redo statements. Personally, I don't mind having to redo a statement next meeting, but I think there's just some general wisdom there having the vote and the statement on the same day.
Any other discussion?
If I could, I think it's important, in my point of view, is to have an elected chair as soon as we can. You know, it's obviously a very important part of the commission, and if there's, I know I'm a non-voting member, but I feel it's a rather important thing. This is the second or maybe third meeting with a non-elected chair. You're doing great work. I do appreciate the way you're doing your job, the task, but I believe it's, you know, going into the fourth meeting with a non-elected chair perhaps, and, you know, that you know, that's just a concern of mine.
Just, regardless of where the vote goes, at the end of the day, we are all here to serve the community. So it does not mean that if anyone does not get voted for the position, that that would create some kind of frictions in the future. It should not. We are, I think, adults in the room, and we can handle that. And the outcome would be for the best of the community and for the best of the commission.
So, I think we're at the roll call for, to see whether we vote tonight. No, So, yeah, so the motion that's on the floor is whether or not we vote tonight, right? So, all right, so let's just take a vote on that. Commissioner Lum, or, I'm sorry, Councilmember Lum.
Yeah, I'm a non-voting.
You are a non-voting, you are right.
Madam Chair, are we voting for the chair?
No, we're voting to see if we're voting
We're
tonight.
voting to vote.
Yeah. Commissioner Jackson,
Yes.
Commissioner Walton,
Yes to voting tonight.
okay. Commissioner Santa Croce?
Yes.
Commissioner Al-Khalali?
Yes.
Commissioner Evans?
No.
Commissioner Tordoro Hargraves?
Yes.
Commissioner Caldwell?
Yes.
Commissioner Offman?
Yes.
Commissioner Stevens, yes. Commissioner Billups?
Yes.
And Commissioner Moore, who is not present. I think the vote carries to vote tonight. So that we would vote tonight. All but one. Yes. There was one no and 8 9.
Commissioner Evans voted no, and I voted yes. Commissioner Moore voted no, and Corinne Moore is absent.
Is absent, right.
Evans.
So you took no? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, we can start with the chair. I'm good with that. All those, in favor of Commissioner Al-Khalali as the chair, please raise your hand. We'll do it by vote. Okay. So I don't see any hands raised, is that right?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Part of parliamentary inquiry, since you are
Running?
running, should someone else be
I'm okay
superintending
with
this?
that too, if no one brought it up, but if you.
No, I just want
Yeah.
to know for parliamentary procedures, is there somebody who can?
Francis can do it.
I'll do it.
Okay. What?
Can we do it from here?
And I would just,
Go ahead and say it.
That's good.
Councilmember Ramlawi just left to go to the HRC meeting to see if Denise could, Ms. Jeans could return to this meeting. So we need her assistance, I believe.
Okay.
Do we want to keep going?
Until she's here.
Yeah.
You can't
Since
vote
we're
without her?
voting.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
we're taking it.
Yeah.
I can do this too, because I'm a non-voting member, so
Okay.
I'm happy to
It doesn't matter.
be a record keeper.
It doesn't really matter who's
The record
does it?
keeper.
running the vote.
Right.
If you prefer, you can
Yeah,
have someone else do it.
okay.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
Okay, so are we on you, or
Pardon me?
should we start over?
Let the non-voting member do it, I think makes the most sense.
I'm happy to do that.
Yeah.
To be the scribe, that too.
All right.
So, we have, so there's been a motion to vote on the chair, and the nominee is Ms. Stevens for chair. The roll call? You have this.
Yep.
So I'm going to call.
Yep.
Ms. Jackson? Yes. Yes, okay. This is for Ms. Stevens.
Right, but what
Right.
I mean is, the bylaw said we had to vote with hands, not voice vote, right?
No, it's both, either.
Okay.
Voice or
Got it. Yes for Stevens.
Yeah.
Or I could just do, yeah.
Do a voice vote.
Okay. Mr. Dora Hargraves?
Yes.
Ms. Elkalali?
Yes.
Okay. Reverend Evans?
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell?
Yes.
Mr. Othman?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Billups?
Yes.
And Ms. Walton, sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't get to vote.
It's unanimous.
I didn't get to vote.
Santa
Oh,
Cruz.
Mr. Santa Cruz?
No, no, yes. That's why we did vote.
Apologize. It's unanimous. So,
All right.
Ms. Stevens is the chair, and thank you.
I appreciate your support, and again, if I'm doing it wrong, let me know. I'm happy to deal with that.
Now, candidates for vice chair.
Yes.
Or do you-
No, go ahead, you're doing a great job.
Well, so the candidates for vice chair, we have two.
Yes.
So will someone move the first,
Is Ms. Jackson?
Ms. Jackson? Someone moved by Mr. Dora Hargraves, seconded by Ms. Walton. Okay, another roll call vote. Would you like to do it that way?
Sure.
So starting first with, I'm just going to go down.
Yep.
Ms. Jackson, this is for Ms. Jackson.
So to be clear, we can only vote on one of these next two.
Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Ms. Walton?
Yes.
For Ms. Jackson. Mr. Santa Croce?
Yes.
Ms. Elkalali?
Yes.
Reverend Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Dora Hargraves?
Yes.
Mr. Caldwell?
No.
Mr. Othman?
No.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Billups?
Yes.
Okay. So we have, thank you for returning. So I think
I think the vote is for
the vote is, the vice chair has been approved, and the vice chair is Ms. Jackson.
So thank you for your support, and thank you for voting for everyone who did not vote for me as well. And certainly, I hope to be as supportive to our chair and to this committee as you all need me to be.
Thank you. Kind of do. Okay. Anything else on that? Do we need any other officers? Secretary, treasurer, anything like
Sorry, can I just check, was that vote count 9-2, or was it with one absent?
The last one?
Yeah, we have one
8 to
person
2.
absent, right? So 8-2 and one absent.
8 to 2.
All right. Moving on to new business. I wanted us to make sure that we are all on the same page about what our purpose is and what the incident review and the complaint procedure will look like. And so if we could start with a discussion of the 1.212, which talks about the purpose. And it says the commission has the following purposes: to improve and strengthen, police community relations. What does that mean to people?
Madam Chair, is this equivalent to our mission statement?
It would basically, it's first of all defining why we're here, what our purpose is, and then broadening that into what the vision to make the purpose a reality.
Right. So I think what we've got so far is perhaps a little minimal.
Oh, say that again?
Minimal. There's much to be desired.
Well, and that's what we need to discuss tonight, is what does it mean to improve and strengthen police-community relations? What does that mean?
You want to operationalize it.
Right.
So we can do it.
How do we do that? And what does it look like?
Madam Chair, I think if we read through, there are some areas where there is a room for improving the relationships, whether through meetings, whether visiting the areas, neighborhoods, etc., making an open dialogue with the different components, different areas of the city, different populations of the city. And that would also increase, one is to build the trust. Second, the police or the chief of police, so whomever is being designated to represent the police department, will be available to these communities to address some of their needs. So by enforcing or supporting those areas of collaboration and visibility, that will also improve this point over here. So it really it's a collaborative kind of statements that are placed over here. At the end of the day, it will address some of these issues.
Okay. Did everybody hear that? Anybody respond? Anybody have a different thought?
The other issue also, what is our responsibility in terms of helping the improving the relationship between the police department as well as the city, the citizens of the city?
So it says that the commission has the following purposes: to improve, strengthen police-community relations, to create an environment which allows for better communication, understanding, and relations between the department and the community, to provide the community with a role in recommending policies and practices that ensure a high quality of police services, and to give the community a voice in influencing the selection of leadership for the department, to provide oversight of the department with regard to the provision of police services with the goal that the entire community, meaning everyone who lives, works, studies in, or visits Ann Arbor, may live safely and experience equitable treatment in any interaction with the police. To work with the department to encourage the respectful treatment of all persons and without undue use of force. This concern is of special significance with respect to segments of the community that are vulnerable and have been marginalized, such as persons of color, immigrants, low-income people, victims of domestic violence, those who suffer from mental illness, and transgender persons. To provide a process for outside review of particular incidents to evaluate the police response in the incidents as well as the sufficiency of any police investigation related to the incident and to recommend any changes in police policies or practices. And all of that sounds really good, but what does that look like? Like implementation of that? What can we do or what we should do as a body to make this a reality? Yes.
I think some of these all can go together and you can jumble them up and combine them, but ultimately, look at turning them into a mission statement, but then also putting together processes where people can contact us in some kind of a way through our website or however, and give us their ideas and their thoughts, their input. I mean, if that's the way that we should be this conduit, we need to provide them as many avenues as possible to be part of the process. And you know, it sounds like a lot, but it's something I think that we should definitely give as much opportunity for people to share their thoughts and experiences as possible.
Okay, that's good.
I think there's also, so in the initial line, it says to improve and strengthen. And so if I were thinking like, I mean, if I put my researcher hat back on for 1 second, we'd have to know, we'd have to be able to measure that we improved or strengthened, right?
Yeah.
So we have to know where we were, and then we have to know where we were later, and then determine did we do our jobs, right? And obviously, there's no sort of quantitative measure of this, but maybe there are some things we can think about that would enable us to determine whether we've made any improvement at all. Has any sector improved at all in their relationship with the police? Has any sector felt any kind of stronger, I don't know what the word strengthen means when you guys wrote the ordinance, but it would be helpful to us to figure out how we can determine how well we're doing what we do. Are we making any difference at all? And I think that's what's gonna be really important to people to know. Are we changing anything? And we've got to know sort of, we've got to have some yardsticks or some markers or something for us to be able to determine at least where we need to go, and then at some point measure whether we've gotten there or not. Did we do anything? Did we improve anything? Whether that is relations or communication. Providing a process for outside review is pretty concrete. We can set up a process and we will have accomplished number 6. Encourage, number 5 is a tough word. We can encourage all we want, but we might have to do more than encourage. We might have to facilitate respectful treatment of everybody. And then we'd have to have some way of determining whether or how that happened and if we did our jobs again. So I know when the ordinance was written, maybe number 1 is pretty vague, number 6 is pretty specific. So we have some wiggle room. It seems to me that maybe we could put on the agenda for next time, trying to hammer out some mission statement that maybe pulls some of these things together in some succinct way so that we know what we're supposed to do. Maybe we could think about that in the interim or something.
Well, I think that's, that was my goal with having the discussion tonight, is to try to build that framework to see where everyone is. And I see heads shaking down there. Are you guys comfortable with sharing what part you were agreeing with when Commissioner Jackson was speaking, either Caldwell or El-Khalawi?
I definitely agree with the research aspect of like getting the data together to see, where we're at right now. And, some time down the line, will we improve in, will we still need to improve in? Just something to have a measuring stick, basically.
Okay.
I have to second what Madam Vice Chair said regarding number 1. The word strengthen is quite vague. When I imagine this first element, I think mutual trust. Citizens trust the police and police trust the citizens. That's what the epitome of strength would be in terms of our goal. So basically letting each other be, but also being able to come to each other for help and support. Does that make sense?
Madam Chair,
Evans, you look like you have something to say, no?
Oh, well, as my mind was,
I know.
my wheels
can
were
see
turning,
it.
I know our presence here is because of the hard work of the task force, which for years have kind of worked. And I know that there has been language put together and even research done. And so I'm wondering, to add on to what has already been shared, as far as, I'm not going to use the term, but I am going to use the term to reinvent the wheel. What resources do we already have at our hands in regards to the way the ordinance has been written and the mission and the vision for this particular body? Because I believe some of that work, and was not on the task force, but I
Right.
know a lot of that work has been done heretofore.
It was, I'm not sure how much of that was adopted into this, and we do have a lot of task force history here, and Ms. Beckley, who was part of the, going back, I believe, to the 70s when this started, so she's got that history for us as well. But I don't believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, that the kind of the vision that was originally done by the task force, I think got rewritten. Is that correct, Lori, or is that not a correct statement?
It's not completely
Rewritten, but, so it,
bones of what the task force proposed are
as the vision.
incorporated into the ordinance.
Okay. So yes, Commissioner Santa Croce.
Go ahead.
And there
Can you-
are plenty of best practices out there
Oh, yeah.
that are already invented
Yeah.
by similar commissions.
So, I like the idea of measuring, right? There's no quantitative data unless we make it, right? We can get some qualitative when we can go out and talk to some people and get a sense of the attitude, and then do that again in a few years, but that doesn't really mean much. So what I would suggest is that if we're serious about the measuring, and people seem to be, what we need is some people tasked with figuring out how to go about and do that in a meaningful way now, in a way that can be replicated X number of years out, to see whether we've made any difference, at least in this field. Like I think that's important. I think a lot of the changes we might make might be our very existence looking at conduct, right? But I would suggest that if we're gonna measure it, and I feel like it's a good idea, but others may feel differently, then let's do something about it, soon.
Okay.
I'm in complete support of measurement and setting aside certain people to execute that research. I probably should have said this sooner, but I think that there have been surveys or studies conducted in Ann Arbor measuring the satisfaction of the police department among different demographics. We have some from MLive. Didn't MLive help facilitate that? Or do you know?
Yeah, I can,
Didn't MLive help to facilitate a survey regarding satisfaction with the police department among different demographics?
Direct your question.
It's according,
I apologize.
right, we need to stay engaged here.
Yeah,
I could provide information about that.
could you?
So in the National Citizen Survey that Ann Arbor conducted, it was a satisfaction survey. There is a section on public safety, and it assessed, so that's really the only data point or metric I think that we have accumulated at this point in time, but, and I can share it with you, but there was, it was noted that there was a difference in response for some communities. And that would be, this could be maybe a starting point, if you will, as a data point from which you can then build the kind of metrics and areas that you want to measure with regard to public safety and police services. But yeah, this, I will send you, it's about 3 pages of this 100-page National Citizen Satisfaction Survey that our residents took, and there's about 3 pages of it dedicated to public safety, so I will just forward that to you. And that's the most relevant and recent data that we would,
Madam Chair,
quantitative data.
I think what we need to do is we need to look at what are the areas that we are absolutely lacking. What are the areas that we have partial knowledge? What are the areas that we know that they work? And the ones that work probably require less time and effort. The things that need to be patched might require a little bit work. And the things that we feel that we don't have anything, no basis for, that's the stuff that needs to be addressed. And probably more resources and more time would be invested in that. The other thing I think we'll do is, since the acting chief of police is here, what do they have in terms of the building trust with the community? I know there was the DARE program way back, the Neighborhood Watch is going, and also the community engagement team that is also present. Is there anything else acting chief would address to, with permission, if the acting chief can tell us what do they have, so we can know what the community has, what the police has, and we go from there.
Okay.
Would you invite the acting chief?
Well, I'm gonna entertain 2 more statements and then we'll deal with that.
So, my suggestion would be, on this matter, and something we should be mindful of going forward, is this is subcommittee. Like, what this looks like, and whether we go back and look at other studies and find the existing data points. If we try to do all the work we have to do at the committee level, we're never gonna get anything done. So I think what's important is to cabin this off as something we need to look at, and then point some people to do it, and they can talk to the chief, and they can do the fact finding and come back to the commission with some sort of proposal on what to do. And that would, of course, include picking up whatever existing data points there are.
Commissioner Walton?
Just one comment I had was echoing that, was that I think that this subcommittee would be a better approach, speedier approach to get us where we want to go. But I also think one kind of content-based thing is it's going to be important to think through who we should be asking the questions of to make sure, and I wonder if by having one element of that be to focus on leaders of community groups, non-profits, where the person may change over time but the position doesn't, maybe a way of bringing in some consistency of perspective over time and help kind of get over that it's hard to put a score or a number on something.
Commissioner, or I'm sorry, council member.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If we look at page 8 of the ordinance, it talks about information gathering by the commission. And I think, a couple of our commissioners already made a good point that a lot of what we're trying to tackle here early on should be done by a subcommittee. And section C.
Wait, article?
Page 8, article 1-2.15 below that, but that's 4, but I'm going down to page 8. Information managers.
Oh, I see.
Give information managers, except to the extent provided for by federal or state law, the city charter, a collective bargaining agreement, or a legally recognized privilege. Anyhow, I'll read out loud very well. But as you get down towards the bottom there on page 8, the department will make available to 2 or 3 designated commission members called information managers all records, data, and other requested information relevant to a complaint. The information managers. So again, long-windedly, there needs to be a subcommittee designed for this early on. So just want to make sure that the ordinance already calls out the relationship between the commission and the police department, and for us to appoint members of this commission to be that subcommittee that gathers the information from the police department.
And I don't disagree with that. I guess for me, what the issue was, when I was in the meetings, meeting the potential candidates, and people were talking about, when we were asked the question of what the vision of the task force, or the commission was, I was hearing something very different than what I thought it was. And so I just want to make sure we are all on the same page, just in terms of what our purpose is, what the vision is, before we break off into groups. And those groups go off doing what they think is best, as opposed to what the commission has decided is best. So that's what I'm trying to get at tonight, and then I have no problem with us breaking off into those, as long as we're all on the same page about what the purpose is, what the vision is, before we break off, so that group knows what the parameters are. So that was my goal for tonight. So, I don't know if there's any more discussion on that piece, like, so that we're all clear what the purpose of this commission is, like.
Madam Chair, may I ask, what you thought the purpose was differed from what the purpose actually is, as listed here?
Well, as many of you have stated, it's very broad.
Right.
I mean, it basically is telling us to go out, that as the commission, we're gonna go out and make nice for the police to the community and try to, be that bridge. But until we can be that bridge, we need to understand what are the downfalls, what are the pitfalls, where are we trying to get it? What would it look like if we hit our goal? What is the goal? What does it look like? How are we planning to get there?
Gotcha, thank you.
Does that make sense? Okay. And Commissioner, Council Member Ramwali, you have something on your mind?
Well, the scope of it is pretty broad. I
Right.
think the language was purposely made to be broad so it could capture as much as it could. And it is a pretty daunting task for a new commission to set out, what do we do first, second, and third? And I think perhaps looking at the ordinance and finding the requirements of the commission and addressing those to begin with before we go out and broaden our view, as I hope we will. But focusing on those points that the ordinance calls for, first and foremost, I think would be a good start.
Okay. I don't disagree with that either. Any other discussion on that?
I've just got one more point.
Sure.
I think the quicker we can identify what subcommittees are and what their charges to be, the quicker we will get to work, rather than being reactive. So, I mean,
Right.
I was reading the complaint procedure and the information managers that he brought up. We should have that in place. In fact, whoever that group of people is should read a complaint file or two so they understand how the process works. So if and when it happens, they're prepared to do that, right? So I think the better we're organized as a business and ready to do business, the more business we're gonna get done. I said business 8 times there.
Okay.
Sorry.
I agree with that, but I also think that we need a vision statement, because my concern about opening it up to subcommittees, each subcommittee could actually be working in separate directions from each other if there's no one set vision. And so, I do think you're right, a mission statement or a short vision statement, we need something to put before those committees. And I mean, we could start drawing up a list of committees and ideas, but I think before they're given their charge and set off to go, we definitely need a statement.
And I do have the complaint procedure on here, and I can give us some feedback on that, along with Ms. Ms. Janess. We had the opportunity to meet today And I didn't want to do it with just me. I wanted a couple more commissioners to be there, but unfortunately, it was a last-minute meeting. I got called, and we were able to get a room and everything. So I met today along with Ms. Jennings and Deputy Chief Forsberg, and the union president for, I believe, the road patrol, and then the union president for the commanders, and Mr. Mills, or Sergeant Mills, who is the community outreach. And so these are all, new people that I met today, and I wanted to have an opportunity to speak with them, because I know that, as part of the task force, there was some concern by the police about this commission and what we would be doing and how we would be doing it. And so I wanted the opportunity to speak with them and hear from them exactly how they felt and how they thought that they could work with us. And it was actually a pretty good meeting, and I'm gonna let Denise share a lot of it. We talked specifically about the current complaint process and what the new process might look like. And I think, Janice, you can address that piece of it, please.
Well, we were looking at summarizing some of our findings and making sure that everything is external. Also, we had discussed mediation, but we didn't want to go into that until we were up and literally running. But an ordinance and a vision program in connection with the police department. How can we assist the police in a more straightforward approach? See each other's viewpoints, and a timeline to notify the PSS. We also want to sit down with the commissioner and go over a policy that can be published on our site and review their policies and see what we want to initiate into our policies as well. Create a response over and resend out information in a generic form that when a complaint comes in, then how do we process it, who does it go to first, and what's the turnaround time on that?
And so, as I understand it right now, the way that it is occurring is that the complaints go into the police, and they have, per their collective bargaining agreement, they have a set number of days to notify whatever officer has been identified, and, then they turn it over to internal affairs, and they do their investigation.
Yes.
The discussion that we had is that there is a program being put in place that the complaint would come in via email or electronically through our website, and it would be given a number, and then immediately transferred over to internal affairs, PSS, to start their investigation and to meet their timeline for the collective bargaining agreement. And Denise would be the tracker, for lack of a better, on behalf of us. She would track it to see where it is in the process, if it's taking too long. I had talked about with them, as well as Denise, about the potential for having one commissioner assigned to each complaint. So a complaint comes in, Commissioner Billups is assigned as the lead commission person to work with Denise on tracking it, and then getting the response, and then presenting it to the community, or to the commission. And that's one way of doing it, but we're certainly open, and we should discuss how we want to do this. Because it's part of that whole, I understand what Commissioner Santa Croce is saying, is that we need to be prepared to accept a complaint if it comes in, but we also need to be clear on what it is we can do and what our vision is as all part of that, but we do want to be prepared to do our job if something comes in.
Right.
So that's what's on the table right now for discussion.
Can I make a point there? Is that under the ordinance,
And where are you at specifically?
I'm at, good point, I'm at page 7, but we don't hear from the police. We might be able to see the complaint, I would imagine, but we don't hear the internal side and the internal disposition until 30 days after the disposition of it. Right? So these aren't, maybe I'm misreading, but I'm not seeing live
So it's on-
controversies.
It's on 5B.
5B.
I'm on page 7, 5, A and B,
Yep,
right?
yep.
We don't hear what the police department is, their position on it, on what happened and the rest of it, until it's after it's disposed of by them.
That is correct.
So I think we just need to bear that in mind, right? We're kind of after the fact.
That is correct. We are after the fact, and as I understand it right now, that was part of our discussion today, we can either agree with the police finding, we can disagree and write our own finding, and choose to either make that public or not, and any other thing that we want to do, because we are an independent body. But right now, that is correct. We were given assurances today that we will get the findings as soon as they're made. It's not gonna be like, oh, we've got 30 days to release this. Their plan is to give them back to us as quick as they can, because they also talked about whether or not we are the ones who would send out to the citizen the response to what happened. Rather, that would come from the police department as it currently does, which appears to be a little less formal, just kind of a, hey, we didn't find this officer did anything wrong kind of thing, versus some kind of letter or something from, say, if, you know, this was assigned to Billups, and he would write a letter saying, this is what happened, we did the investigation on behalf of the commission, we agree with the police, or we disagree with the police findings.
So my question then is, has there been any complaint that's been disposed of in the last, when did we meet, April 30th? So from April 1 on, and if so, are we in the pipeline for that report on that complaint?
I would say we haven't received anything because we haven't been set up to receive it until recently.
We're in the process of finishing up the webpage and putting the language on for the complaint form.
No, I understand that,
But you're saying that the
procedure-
police already.
Logistics procedure, but by the,
Regular.
besides the point.
Right.
Okay.
Has there been a complaint
Received.
that's been, no, not received, but, well, received or resolved
Right,
by the police department since our first meeting?
since we've been in,
Since we've been duly constituted?
we can.
And if there hasn't, there hasn't. But I think that's something we should be cognizant of, because if there has, that needs to come in the pipeline now,
Okay.
right?
Does anyone object to us having Deputy Chief Forsberg answer that question? No. Anyone? Do you mind? You're on the hot spot. Did you hear the question?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I don't know, we have had complaints come in. I don't know if we've had any resolved since your first meeting or not, but my understanding was that, so then we need to have a discussion on what the expectations are for the commission as far as complaints coming into us that were not generated or received by us from you. So if you want updates on complaints that we are receiving that are coming in directly to us, I think we need to talk about how best to keep you informed of what's happening with that.
And I guess for me, that's where part of my confusion is, because my preference, and this is personal, my preference is that you not receive any complaints, that they all come through the commission, just so that there's no appearance of anything. And I don't know if that's a best practice or not, but that's how it feels to me, is like all the complaints should come directly through Janice, they should get a number and then be sent over to you, just so that we can say honestly that we're tracking them and we know, you know, if it came, because if something comes to you and then you've got to send it to her, again, we're talking about that timeline as well, that we don't want to mess that up for the collective bargaining. So that is one suggestion that I have. I'm willing to hear from others what your thoughts are. Should they be going directly to us and not? Because from the way that it sounds, they would go two ways. We would have them coming into the commission through the webpage to Denise, and then the way that they've been going, through the police department. I think that could be
It's in the
confusing.
ordinance, it is, and we might, I don't know what we'd have to do with regard to the ordinance, because it does say
Or.
complaint with the commission or the department.
What page are you on, please?
I'm on
Under
page
the-
4,
Under the incident review.
Right.
Okay.
Filing a complaint.
and it's filing a complaint, and
Yes.
it is letter A, so 2A.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to stop, someone shows up
Right.
at the police department saying, I want to file a complaint. Kind of got to let them do it rather than, oh, go find this.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that's why they did that, but either way, I think we're stuck.
Madam
with that.
Chair? And I think the process should be that if somebody walks into the police department to do a complaint, that they still have that option, because everybody's not gonna have the option to go to a webpage and do it. We just have to have a process that we get from the police department, that complaint in a timely manner to add into the list of stuff that we're looking at.
Okay. Is that, what's your response to
Yeah,
that?
well, I think it's important for us to be able to take complaints.
Okay.
To have the trust of the community for that, and also at 2 in the morning, if somebody wants to come in and complain about a traffic stop or something that happened, I think it's important for us to have an on-duty supervisor be able to
They'll
take
get
that.
up and come and handle it.
But I think however you want to be informed and whatever timeliness you would like on those complaints that we receive, it's not a problem for us to share that information.
Just a question. Has it been your understanding, Deputy Chief Forsberg, and anyone else's for that matter, whether or not this commission needs to designate a community liaison? I ask because, again, in the ordinance, now I'm on page 5F, subparagraph F, under 2, a person who wishes to transmit information to the commissioner city but does not wish to file a complaint or contact the commissioner city directly may contact a community liaison designated by the commission under the ordinance. So that to me seems like a step one, we need to designate that individual. Is that how,
Or maybe a 1A.
I'm sorry?
Maybe a 1A, in that people could bring complaints to the police department, people can bring complaints to the website, people could contact the community liaison. So there might be a several-pronged approach to that. I wouldn't want the community liaison to be an intermediary between us and anybody who wanted to contact us directly.
Right, I'm just saying though that our ordinance says that this person, we have this person. We don't now, at this point in time, have this person, so I do think that we need to comply with the ordinance, and, I mean, there are,
My understanding is,
multifaceted ways to, multi-pronged, whatever, ways to go about this, but I do think that we should designate this community liaison person as it states we will do in the ordinance, and
I think, no, so we need a person who is competent in the event that this wants to be confidential, that they have experience with confidentiality. Go. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, if we were to establish an outreach committee, could that be something that they're tasked to do, since they'll be the ones interacting with the community? Or does it really need to be one individual? Because that could be a large task for an individual.
so many chicken and egg situations. I mean, we need a work plan.
They can't be part of the commission, because this says,
Right.
if the person does
Designated
not
by.
wish to file a complaint or contact the commission or the city directly. So this is somebody,
So
this
this
is
is
like a third party.
Yeah, so this is
entity.
a trusted person in the community who has some experience with this, perhaps a community leader, perhaps a person that, not obviously, but a person that we, as a collective, agree on can have the responsibility, and then we let people know
Right.
who this person is. If in the event that you want to remain confidential, or if in the event you're not comfortable going at 2 a.m. to the police department or to the website, that you contact this person, and that we have entrusted this person to then bring the information to us.
And I will just note, if I may, it's not at all prescriptive, so it doesn't say that, that this can or cannot be a commission member. It's just that this commission designates this liaison person.
But, well, can I just say one thing, that it does clearly say does not wish to file a complaint or contact the commission. I would argue, if it's an individual person, but they are on the commission, that to me is not a big enough separation I mean, they're gonna come right back and talk to the commission.
Correct. We have a lawyer.
Yeah, I'm just to point out, there's some further clarification of the community liaisons in the bylaws, section 9.6, and it talks about one or more persons in the community who may serve as a liaison, and it goes on to describe what that is. So it is envisioned to be a community member, and it may be more than one.
Got you. Thank you so much for that clarification. He said 9.6.
Page 7 of the bylaws.
Is anyone opposed to taking a question from the?
No.
from the
No.
community? Please.
This was one of the issues that we brought up, but what I wanted to ask is, we in the community wanted to be able to bring, if a person comes to us with a issue or a complaint, that we can bring them to you. They might not have access to a computer. They might not feel comfortable coming to the police to file it. That's why you're here. That's one of the reasons why you're here, to be here for the community, not for the police and not for the city. You're here representing the community. And I do know that you have to follow the police and their rules and regulations and this. I know all of that. But what I'm trying to find out is if someone comes, let's say someone comes to me and they have a legitimate complaint or concern about their child, are we able to bring that person to a meeting here? Or do I have to tell that person, well, you have to go to the police department, where they're not gonna feel comfortable? Because we don't have that bridge of what do I want to say? We don't have the bridge where we can trust. And that's what this is all about, to build this trust. So how do we do that, those of us in the community?
So there needs to be another forum
Yes.
that you're saying, so
Yes.
not a website. If you want to bring a complaint to us, we need some other kind of venue where you can walk a human in and say, tell them your story.
I think we should be able to bring them to your meeting and ask previously or prior to the meeting, we have a concern, can that person come to this meeting, or do we have to set up something else? But to bring it to you, and then you make you listen and then give advice from there.
Okay, we got several comments, so I'm gonna try to start here and work my way that way, okay? So,
Am I making myself clear?
Yes, you do. And the person can be anonymous, does not need to be present over here for that complaint to be reached into wherever it goes, unless that person wants to show up. That does not minimize the value of the complaint. So if the person wants to stay out, but conveys that through different means, that complaint should be taken the same path as if that person wants to be known and wants to be present and wants to address the commission over here.
But I'm just trying to find out if that person wants to be heard and seen, can come before you, or do they have to go to the police? That's what I'm trying to
The only thing is because it's an open meeting, and if the person does or does not want to be shown on TV,
We would explain all that to the
Yeah.
person.
it's a wide range of options, from
Okay.
anonymous to being present.
Commissioner
I think you misapprehend the commission meeting process. I don't think this is a place, I mean, people are free to speak for 3 minutes at the start of the meeting, and the commission, my understanding of where it's, commissions don't respond to that. That's a chance for the public to talk to the commission, but not a two-way conversation. This is a little unusual. I'm not condemning it. I'm just saying this is a little unusual. If someone, but it's not a place to file a meeting is not a place to file a complaint. And it's not something that we will then react to and give advice to. That's not the way it happens. Someone's got to.
That's why it's supposed to be independent and different.
Well, ma'am, what I'm telling you is, it doesn't make sense for that. It's a public forum. People have to file a complaint, and they can do it, it sounds like, hopefully with a person, right? Doesn't have to be anything formal. It shouldn't be limited by technology or transportation or anything, right? We need to be out there listening to these complaints. What I'm saying is this isn't the forum, and it's particularly not the forum if the person wants to remain anonymous. That's the complaint procedure.
Okay, who else had their hand up? Commissioner?
It was me. I think what it sounds like, first we want to make it clear, anybody can come speak to us at any time.
Yeah.
I would like people to feel very comfortable. If they see me on the sidewalk, they can stop me and ask me questions or talk to me. But I do think that what I'm hearing now, most recently, I think kind of helps me understand more of what Commissioner Coleman was saying, is that if we had a smaller group, and even if someone, maybe they didn't want to be anonymous, but they were still a little uncomfortable and intimidated by such a large commission, they could meet with a smaller subgroup that they could feel more comfortable with and so on. I think all of that is absolutely something we can work on as we move forward in setting up the process.
Okay. I know Commissioner Billups had his hand up.
Yeah, you can go first.
Ma'am, how I personally envision things is that we would have a subcommittee that can be designated just for outreach. So if it looks like setting up every other month at a community center and giving the community a chance to express themselves, and if we get, the website up and running so that, okay, we're having a forum and we're having a back and forth conversation, and we also have a laptop set up on the side for you to access the website. If you couldn't access it at home, and you could put in that complaint or whatever the case may be. I definitely think that having a outreach committee is something that'll benefit the public.
Thank you. Commissioner Billups?
I'm just reading through this information about a community liaison, and it's sort of vague, but I think it's an important thing for us to look at and figure out how that person plays the role of anonymous complaints that are made, and the ability for us to make sure that who's ever making the complaint is protected if they didn't want their identity to be exposed. So I just think we need to spend more time probably discussing that and trying to figure out and defining exactly what that is. So that's it.
Got you, thank you. Yes,
I don't specifically know how the complaints are processed when they're received at the police station. But I'm not quite seeing why filing a complaint at the police station and us having authority over the complaint are mutually exclusive. The way I saw it was there's a difference between filing the complaint and then the police processing the complaint. So with the police station, there's the advantage of somebody being able to go at 2 a.m. and process that complaint if need be. But the police, to my understanding, don't necessarily need to process that or entangle themselves in it in any way, shape, or form. They can simply collect it and give the,
no, they have to do the investigation as well.
So if they're the ones that receive the complaint, they have to facilitate the investigation.
Not, even if they don't receive the complaint, whoever receives the complaint, it has to be investigated by the police department.
So my question then is, how would we have full,
We don't have full anything.
right.
Right,
So-
that's part you need to understand. So we only have the power to recommend, to disagree. And then I don't know if it would be something that would go to city council if we like they exonerate an officer, say, and we come back and say, no, we don't think that that's appropriate, that, you know, there should have been more action taken, I'm not sure. It would, the only people that I believe would have the power to do anything about what we recommend would be city council. And if I'm wrong on that, please let me know.
I would,
The CBA, you know, spells out
There
a
is
lot
a
of it.
collective bargaining
And then you
agreement.
go to
Absolutely.
arbitration, so, there's a lot of contract law in place.
Right.
So it's,
It's a court
And a
that
lot
gets
of
this.
this
Madam Chair, maybe I misunderstood
Spelled
what
out
you were
in the
talking about. I thought that you said that your ideal system would be us solely receiving.
The ideal
complaints.
system in my mind is for us to receive them.
Yes.
And then we have to immediately, like, she gets it at 3 o'clock, it's gotta be in the police hands by 3:30.
Right.
We don't do any fact-finding, we don't do any decision-making. We only, the police, through the standards and the, what's it called? PSS, help me.
PSS,
Yes, do a complete investigation. They determine whether or not the officer was, you know, justified, not justified. That recommendation then would come to us. That's the police recommendation. We could then review it as a body and determine that, yes, we're okay with what they decided. And as I stated, one idea, and this is just ideas, is that whoever is assigned to that particular case, Denise would assign as they come in, each commissioner would be assigned a complaint to follow up on. And then once we get the findings from the police, we would talk about it as a body. If we're in agreement with it, then we don't do anything except send a letter saying, you know, we've reviewed what the police did, we think it's okay, or we don't. And then at that point, if we disagree, we're not sure what happens next.
well, I mean, I don't want to speak outside the lines, but there is, after the police have concluded their investigation, this commission can then go on its own fact-finding and hire outside counsel if it needs to look into things as well. You know, so there is powers that it has, but the first thing that needs to be done is the investigation
Right.
by the police department. It's not going to be concurrent investigations. You can't have concurrent investigations
cannot
under the
be
CBA.
concurrent.
So, you know, you have to allow the police to do their work first before this commission can do what it's set out to do. But it does have more, it can investigate things on its own only after the police have concluded their investigation, as long as it doesn't violate, you know, the things in the CBA. Now,
Correct,
Councilmember
but
Lum, expand on
Again,
that.
if we disagree, then what?
Well, then it's up to, you know, policymakers to hammer it out.
Right.
But we also get to say we disagree.
Correct,
Sure.
publicly, yes, absolutely. Councilperson Long.
That's okay, that's okay.
At a moment.
No, would it be helpful to have the city attorney's office, because the procedure for these investigations, who reports to whom, the timing, all of this is laid out in some detail in the ordinance. So, based on this conversation, this discussion, I'm thinking it might be helpful to have the city attorney, at a subsequent meeting, walk us through the procedure as it's outlined in the ordinance. Filing complaints, following up on complaints, et cetera, et cetera. And if no one objects, the city attorney, Mr. Postum, is here, and perhaps he could
Could I just say
address
one thing
this.
before the city attorney talks? I understand that it's in the ordinance, but I also understood as being on the task force that it was left purposely very vague so that this commission could really hammer it down and make it what the citizens wanted.
Ordinance is the law.
So, I would defer to the city attorney.
And, okay, go ahead.
Madam Chair, that issue, I think it would take another session. Right now, to look at it, I think we can frame some Q&A, some FAQ, you know, whatever you want on it. But the issue about when you disagree In the end, you are an advisory body, and that sounds harsh in one sense, but really not. I mean, to the extent that the discipline is done and so on, it is after the fact. If you disagree with what the police have done, it's your obligation to really state that. For the most part, it's not going to change that initial discipline, and I can go through on how that is, but it may in fact change how things go forward or what the recommendations are. And so that's something I'd just like to spend a little more time. I'm not prepared right now to walk through it, but it's really an important question. And
It is
so,
very important.
so I think it deserves additional attention, and in fact, we'll talk with the acting chief and really set it out a little more clearly, although Councilmember Lum, obviously it is set forth in the ordinance fairly carefully.
It is, and I'm just wondering.
Sorry, if I may.
And Councilmember, I can't hear you.
Okay,
I'm
I'm
swimming
sorry.
a little bit, and
Okay.
I gotta speak up.
Would it be possible for the city attorney's office to turn this ordinance into a flow chart? So, how these complaints, reports are done, and I just think that would be helpful, because we've got multiple pages here talking about this procedure, and we all.
Councilmember Lum, I appreciate
I think
that.
it would just be.
I know you like flow charts.
Yeah, I do.
And in fact, for the commission, we're quite willing to do that. I think it's helpful.
Would that be helpful for people?
Yes.
Okay.
Can I address that just for a second?
Sure.
So I don't have any problems with this specific instance of advice, but I think we have to be mindful that we might have a conflict here, right? We're an independent commission, so the idea of relying on legal advice for all matters on the city attorney I don't think it's proper, or it doesn't sit well with me. I think kind of ministerial stuff like this is fine, but I think I think so, but ultimately, we need our own, the advice on what our rights are, what our powers are under this ordinance shouldn't be coming from the city attorney.
Well,
I mean, with all due respect, sir.
we could talk about that some more, but in the end, I will say that the issues, we do that all the time for both commissions and outside. And in the end, the issue about what the police can do and how they do it is set forth in the charter. So I think that even with outside, I mean, you could get a second opinion, you could do all that, but in the end, and it's not as harsh as it seems, in the end, somebody needs to move forward, and on the discipline, that really, Councilmember Romali, is really set forth by the collective bargaining agreement. And so I think that's the best way to do it. So I think the flow chart would be a good start before we get to that.
And I have no objection to it, I just was trying to kind of call that, there may be points where we really need to talk to our own lawyer, because we are not like every other commission in the city.
And the only other thing that I would caution you on that is the attorney for, as far as independent counsel, that lawyer is actually not for the commission.
Right.
It's for the benefit of the council and then the commission at the same time. The privilege is attached to the council and so on, and I'm happy to talk to you about that. That was set forth
Right.
in what we've set forth both in the charter and otherwise. So I think that was addressed very clearly, that because you're not a legal entity, the issue would really be, it would have to be hired through normal procedures.
So this, if I understand you correctly, if this commission requests council,
The request goes to the council, yes.
and then the council will have to approve it,
Yes,
and that's what you're
Right.
asking?
yes. It's like any other contract. Yeah.
No.
Yep.
Councilman, or, that's okay. I was just going to say, I'm not asking the city attorney to opine on.
No, I understand.
Just to basically give us a, again, a flow chart version of the ordinance, so.
I have no objection, I was just bookmarking it, because I think there may be times where we want independent advice. That's all, not in this instance.
So I think the discussion was definitely needed, and we need more to really hash this out. I'm sorry, Commissioner Jackson?
I want to back up just a second, and I want to ask if what the procedure is or whether we need to discuss. I'm interested in making sure that we do see all of the police complaints that have arrived since we took our oaths. So if that's April 30th, if there's a mechanism for requesting that, even if we aren't quite set up to review them yet, whatever, I want to make sure that we do, from that date, a list, see them. Could we have a motion to that effect? I could make a motion, actually, I'm allowed to do that, I'm not chair.
Well, if we could just talk it through before we motion it, that would be great. So as I understand it, and Denise, please help me, as it stands right now, the website's supposed to be available tomorrow.
Yes.
That includes the numbering piece of it,
Piece of
correct?
it, so you can fill out a complaint form.
Okay,
Yes.
but if something did not, if a complaint came in that did not come through the website, would there be a mechanism to get it numbered and become a part of our tracking system?
Well, then I would put that in. I would
You
put
would
the complaint
physically-
in myself.
Okay.
So it will generate a number.
Okay, so is there a Deputy Chief Forsberg, is there a person or a mechanism for Denise to find out what complaints have come in since we've been sworn in? Great, all right, so we can make that happen, Ms. Jackson? And is there anyone else that has any suggestions on that piece? So, as I understand it, then Denise is going to coordinate with the police person who receives those complaints. She's gonna get us up to date on what complaints have come in since we've been sworn in. April 30th, correct. And, do we need to do a motion on whether or not her procedure will include her assigning one commissioner to be the lead commissioner on that particular complaint? So that every single complaint has one commissioner who's responsible for following up on it and then getting back to the community member.
Just have a procedural question. So I'm reading the ordinance, sorry, with regard to this. And it does state in the ordinance that our review, this commission's review, shall occur after the department and city have completed all proceedings relating to an incident. So in terms of having the police department report out on any complaints, is that, these would be the complaints that have been reviewed then by the police department?
Not just reviewed, but acted upon.
Yeah, we're active.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing that prevents us, someone files a complaint tomorrow, there's nothing that prevents us from looking at it. We can't do anything, we could say something about it, but that would be kind of foolish, because we haven't heard the city's response yet.
Right.
Right? But it doesn't mean that this commission shouldn't have a sense of what's going on in the community, real time.
I
Right.
totally agree.
So it's just information then, because it does state that the commission's review and examination shall not proceed or be concurrent with the department's actions.
Right, so no action, we just want information.
We just want to know.
I think I would suggest that since this is going to be an ongoing issue, I would like to have that as part of our coming agendas, is updates on number of cases that have been reported to the police department.
Commissioner Akalali?
Madam Vice Chair, to my understanding, you just want to obtain the information with full knowledge that we can't yet necessarily investigate or act upon it. Yes. So with that in mind, may I ask why it's necessary to determine the structure of how the commissioners will handle the information? Like when you said like one commissioner assigned to each case, like is it really necessary that we determine that right now when we're not really going to investigate it?
I think because, again, in the conversation that we had today, part of the discussion that we had with the police was who would respond? Would we respond or would the police respond? So if we are responding, I don't want it to be, let me just say this, it doesn't feel like it's personal to me if it just comes from the commission. And then the person has a question, who do they contact? If it comes from Lisa Jackson, one of the commissioners, that's a specific person that a person would feel like they must have some knowledge about my particular complaint. And then they would try to, and then if it needed bigger, intervention or whatever, then we could bring it. But that was just one suggestion. It does not have to be that way. That is just one way that I am suggesting. We certainly can do what we all feel is best. And I'm gonna go with, and we've only got a few more minutes and a couple more things to cover, so.
I would agree with that, because I also think that if the complaint does come through our website, the response should come from one of us. Personally, as opposed to, no offense, but as opposed to the department. Now, if the department gets the complaint, then you would respond accordingly, or then we would also respond too, because we would have somebody assigned to it. But I think predominantly, if it does come through our site, we definitely should be giving the parties a personal response.
Commissioner Phillips?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just for clarification, so our response is after the police department has done all of their investigation, and our response at that point is, this is what the police department came up with, and either we agree or we disagree with the findings, correct?
That's my understanding.
Okay.
That's right. And we can do our own investigation.
Correct.
To some degree.
Correct.
And I believe, Wallace, yeah.
I like the personalized approach to the response to the complainant, but my concern is if somebody is sick, if somebody's on vacation, if, I just feel should be more than just perhaps one person designated with that.
Yeah, and I don't think it should be on, to use your example, on behalf of Lisa Jackson. I will have brought the information to the entire committee. Everybody is gonna discuss it. I might be the person designated to formulate the response, but it's on behalf of all of us. And if Denise assigns one to DeAndre and DeAndre is out of the country on vacation, it can be passed on to the next person, or DeAndre can say, hey, I'm out of the country this month. And so I know that we can back each other up, and so that they aren't going to be lost in the shuffle of just 11 people. And I know we can devise a system to do that.
Right.
So it isn't gonna be a single person doing it, that we just have a point person, but we are
Right.
each all responsible for every case.
I have a question. What type of response we are going to deliver? Are we going to respond to the complaint and we tell them, we received your complaint and we are going to pass it to? Or what? Can you tell us, a little bit, explain to us what is the response that we are talking about?
Okay, and I will let
I was just gonna say,
Councilmember Lum go
Ms.
first.
Jackson just said, we need to devise a system, and I agree entirely. Whoever is designated to field these referrals, these complaints, we certainly need, we need to outline the process. One, I don't know, notify, Ms. Ginnis, sorry, to, and so on. But we don't have, we haven't created that
That's what we're talking
system.
about.
And that is what we're talking
That's
about.
what we're talking about.
So, yeah, whoever has this responsibility needs to know what that protocol is for following up.
So it's about 10 minutes till, and we're gonna need to be done, and we want to get through at least one other issue. In terms of the new business, I think we decided that we need to work on the purpose and the vision. Is that correct? Yes. And how do we want to address that?
I'm happy to take a first stab at a draft, and we can then share it with each other, or
I
several
can
of us.
help you with that.
Yeah, and we can work from there.
Okay, well, again, we have to be careful that we're not
Right, there's.
making
right,
decisions
yes.
about
No,
it
no, no,
over
trust
email,
me.
because then we're hitting the quorum issues, okay? So be very careful when you're responding.
So we're allowed to discuss via email, but we're not allowed to do any action via email, correct?
You can't,
It's such a fine line.
can't
No,
discuss.
what's
Nothing.
discussed? So
It's
less
such
than
a
quorum
fine
can
line.
discuss.
It's such a fine line.
So 5 can discuss.
No.
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 The best way is often to have a
Cannot
couple of
discuss.
people work on the draft and then share it with the body
Okay.
with no
Okay.
discussion until you get to the meeting.
Till you get to the meeting.
Right.
Basically, you
Got
can't
But
discuss.
what you said, a few people can work on it. What's the few? What's that
That
number?
would be less than a quorum.
Less-
So
less
5.
than five,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. 6 is quorum, right? So 5 of us can, yeah.
So it sounds like Commissioner Todor and Commissioner El Kalali
Yes.
are offering. Does anyone else want to work with them?
Oh, well.
No?
And this would be on Google Docs, I assume.
I can put it on there.
Right.
Okay.
So we don't need the messy back and forth on email. We'll just have it all in one document.
And then once the document is to a point, we would forward it to you.
That's correct. And then we'll get it out. Okay. So on that, we kind of sort of talked about the I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to ask if this could be provided everyone by, say, I don't know, since our next meeting is the 25th of June, if they could provide it, and it could be, the draft could be included in the packet for the next meeting
Absolutely.
on the 25th. So if you could get it to us by maybe the 21st, Friday?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Thank you.
That works
And then
for
again,
me.
we're not discussing it, it's just, you're providing us that information.
And you're just looking at it.
Yes.
Great, thank you. And like I said, we talked about the incident review a little bit, and then we talked about the complaint procedures. And once Denise has everything in place, she can send out an email to let us know that, the numbering system's in place and all of that. And I think we're gonna need to talk about it again, next meeting, as to like narrow it down as what the procedure is, based on everything we talked about tonight, okay? Any other questions under the new business? Any statements? Anybody? Perfect, okay. So the next agenda item included the seminar that I sent out to people that's gonna be in Detroit on September 22nd through, September 22nd through September 26th, and is the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. If you are interested in attending, I did clear it with Howard that this was a conference that could be paid for out of the funding that we've been given. I think it would be really helpful for us. You can go to their website, they've got a lot of great information. I think that it would be an opportunity for us to talk to other people from other parts of everywhere about what they're doing, how they're doing it, and hopefully by then, we'll have a better idea of what we're doing to try to see if we can, pull away from other places, what they're doing and how it will work here in Ann Arbor. So again, anyone who can make that, please let Denise know right away so she can get us registered. I am not spending the night, but I will be going for all of the days. But it's just in Detroit, I can drive back. Or we can stay at Jason's house. He lives out that way, so.
This is far away.
Anyway, right. The next thing we wanted to talk about really quick before we have to go is whether or not we wanted to add any additional meetings. And I know that July and August are big vacation times. So I'm, a little gender about putting them in there, but we do have a lot that we need to talk about and a lot that we need to get in place fairly quickly. From being a public defender, I know that summertime is a busy time for complaints and people having way more contact with the police than they need to. And so I anticipate we'll probably be getting more complaints based on, more activity, people being out, having more contact with the officers. So it might be helpful for us if we could stick in an extra meeting or two in 1 month or both of the months. So what are people's thoughts about that? I think we have one scheduled already in July for, let's see.
It's the end of July, right?
Yeah,
It's the 25th.
the 25th.
Right.
It's a
So,
Thursday. Right.
pardon me?
June is the 20th.
July the 25th.
July
Yeah.
25th.
okay.
It is July.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
27th, yeah.
and I believe that if we can't use council chambers, that we can maybe able to use downstairs, the basement, or we might be able to see if we can use CTN, because we've used that before. Yes.
I don't think it hurts, you could certainly try, but I don't think it's healthy, particularly for a new body, to jam in a couple of meetings where you've got just a bare quorum attending. So maybe try and see if people are around and can make it, and you get a pretty good-sized group, and if not, maybe don't have them.
Well, I mean, and that's why we're trying to see if we can schedule something, if we can pin down a date so people know if it's
Right.
around your vacation or not. Then if we don't have a quorum, then we won't meet, but if we can get a quorum, like I said, we've got quite a bit to do. So, what are people's thoughts?
I think just send us some dates for those months and see who's going to be around,
Okay.
and that would be okay.
I'll check on room availability.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a good
July,
idea.
August.
Okay.
Yep, we can do that. We will send you some dates then. Yep. So any other discussion about that, the additional meetings? No? Okay, communication. Anything? No, don't forget on Saturday, there is the Bridging 23 Unity March that begins at 9 a.m. and begins in Ann Arbor, or I'm sorry, Ypsilanti, and we'll be walking to Ann Arbor, and it will join the African American Downtown Festival here in Ann Arbor once we get here, but that is open to all community members, and we'd like to see you there. I talked to the police today, and they certainly plan to have a presence, so it would be great if some of us could also show up.
I can be there.
I'm sorry?
Which date?
Saturday, June 1st. Yes. Anybody else? Oh, okay. All right, the last thing is public comment. If anyone else has any, oh. Well, there we go. Please come forward. Thank you.
Good evening.
Evening.
I'm Lori Saginaw. I know some of you, and I look forward to knowing all of you. I was the co-chair of the task force that crafted the bones of the ordinance that is now governing you. And it is indeed vague in many areas purposefully, so that you would have the freedom as a wise body to enact it as you saw the most fitting response to the needs of our entire community. And what I wanted to add is that those of us on the task force who dedicated our last summer to this and spent many, many hours with Jason Forsberg learning about this in order to write that ordinance, and also met with many community members and groups out there about their issues. We are available to you. I don't want to impose myself on you. I know that you are working together to build your own culture, and I really respect that. But please know that we are available. The other thing is that in the beginning, this commission, the idea and the need for this commission came about because of incidents in this community where there was eroded trust on the part of the community, and there was also a culture within this police department that was not transparent. So the goal, in my mind, is that you as a body add a layer of transparency of what goes on between these two parts of our community that is very necessary. And so it's not so much to police the police, and it's not so much to do their PR, and it's not so much to align yourself with the community, but to offer more transparency. And really, that, to me, is the core for earning trust. If the community can see you as a body and as individuals, as people who are willing to talk to other people, people who are willing to talk to the department, engage as human beings, that's going to lay the foundation for the trust that we need. And I guess I have a sensitivity to the phrase building trust because I really believe that trust is earned by action. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Deputy Chief Foster.
All right, so I just want to take this opportunity to let you know that the Ann Arbor Police and Fire Departments are having a public safety open house, and you're all invited, as is the entire community. It's going to be on June 8th from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. It'll be my bearings just outside here in the parking lot. And then I also just wanted to share with you another invitation that we're happy to come talk to you all in small groups, large groups, or whatever, to teach you a little bit about who we are, what we do, how we're organized, and then especially as you're formulating your procedures to go about reviewing things. I think it's important that you understand how we do it so you can see maybe where you should be inserted in that process and what information you want to ask from us. So we're happy to schedule anything and provide as much or as little information as you all want. And my other request is if you want any reoccurring information from the department at these meetings, or if you want me to tell you anything at these meetings, or if there's anything you want just as a one-off for the meetings, just go through Denise and let her know and give me enough time to prepare that information. So if you want information about how many complaints we've received, I won't be able to answer it if you call me up during the meeting, but if I'm prepared, you know, a couple hours in advance, I can have that information ready for you guys. So thank you.
Thank you.
So I do want to thank Deputy Chief Fosberg for meeting with us today and going through, it helped Denise and I kind of formulate how we're going to do the procedure, and I think that we should be able to work with them very well to get this done. So we really appreciate that. You also offered, your community person offered to do a Citizens Academy for us individually. If we'd like to do that, we can get that scheduled. I told him I'd rather just do it all in one day as opposed to, he mentioned doing it a couple of evenings, different evenings. I was like, no, I'd rather just do a whole Saturday. But I think Denise will get us some dates for that as well. We were also invited to do ride-alongs. I'm doing it on a football Saturday, so I can see what's really.
Nice.
I may never get back. But yeah, so we can do ride-along with the officers as well, so that we can actually see what's going on in the street. So I would encourage all of you to contact Denise, let her know what days and times you're available, and then it's my understanding that the shift officers will coordinate.
How long is the shift? How long is the ride?
It can be anywhere from a couple hours to 4. I think they said 4 hours minimum.
We have no minimums or maximums.
Okay.
We just usually try to schedule them in 4-hour chunks, but if you wanted to do only an hour, I think less than an hour, you're doing yourselves a disservice. It's really just kind of a roll the dice on what's going to be happening when you're doing the ride-along, so.
Oh,
you know,
can you specify to them when the shifts start and end? Because usually they don't like trading off.
Sure. We'll be happy to trade off if there's an overlap, but we have a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. shift, a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. shift, and then we also have a swing shift in between those shifts. So, but we will put you with somebody for however long you want to come ride with us.
Perfect, thank you. So we will do the Google poll too for the Citizens Academy, okay?
Thank you.
And I would like to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. You give a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you all. The meeting is adjourned.
Can I put a couple things